everyone, this is Yue Xiaoli, and I believe this is our last presentation for this semester. Today, I'm going to talk about Veblen effect in a theory of conspicuous consumption. In 1899, Veblen published a book called The Theory of the Leisure Class, and in this book, he divided the good and service into parts. One is inconspicuous goods and another one is conspicuous goods. He mentioned that people crave status and displays of wealth can help to enhance the status. People choose to use wealth as the evidence of people's respect. Economics. This came to be known as the Veblen effect. For more details, the Veblen effect refers to increase in consumer demand for a higher priced commodity. It reflects people's psychological desire for conspicuous consumption. A higher price of a commodity is set, and more consumer will propensity to buy it. As the picture shows below, we can see the consumer increase the demand for a good simply because of it has a higher price. For example, a pair of leather shoes with the same style and the leather can be sold for $80 at the ordinary shoe store, and when it entering the counter of a big shopping mall, it will cost a few $100s, but there are more people willing to buy it. The purpose of conspicuous consumption is not only to obtain direct material satisfaction and enjoyment, but to a greater extent to obtain a social and psychological satisfaction. Because certain goods have a conspicuous effect on others, such as buying luxury cars to show nobility of status, collecting famous paintings to show elegant hobbies. Only the high-priced goods can show the wealth and status of the purchase. This kind of consumption tends to increase with the development of society. People's consumption will gradually transit from the pursuit of quantity and quality to the pursuit of taste and style as their income increase. In the theory of Veblen effect, the utility is over consumption and status, not over consumption and price. There are two motives for conspicuous consumption. One is invidious comparison, and another is pecuniary emulation. Invidious comparison refers to the members who are in the higher classes to buy expensive goods and luxuries to distinguish themselves from members of the lower classes. Pecuniary emulation is when members of the lower classes consumes conspicuously so that he will be thought as a member of the higher classes. In modern terms, these motives are essence of the incentive compatibility conditions that form a basis for signaling. The high-class people voluntarily pay more to distinguish themselves from low-class peoples, and they know the cost is so large so that it will be hard to imitate. Now we are going to talk about the positive effect of the conspicuous consumption. So as we can see, the first one is about conspicuous consumption has strong positive effects on the production. The wealthy people show their status by buying some expensive luxury goods. To meet the consumption desire of these wealthy people, it is necessary to produce more and more expensive luxury goods, and it is necessary to create conditions and environment for the consumption. Now we are going to talk about the second positive effect of conspicuous consumption. The conspicuous consumption is conducive to launching the market and stimulating consumption. The expansion of consumer demand will inevitably bring huge business opportunity, and conspicuous consumption played an important role in it. According to the survey, under the top-level exhibition with luxury cars, private plane, watches, and so many top luxury goods, the volume of transaction will be more than $25 million. So that's a way to help promote the consumptions. Now let's talk about the last positive effect of the conspicuous consumption. The conspicuous consumption can increase the national tax and helping to adjust the proportion of saving and consumption. Also, it can promote balancing the income gap. Conspicuous consumption can upgrade and expand the related industries, which has a certain effect on stimulating economic growth. In addition, the high-end consumption will lead to increase the national taxation, and conspicuous consumption can slow down the accumulation of monetary wealth of the wealthy people. Meanwhile, it can provide more opportunities to make money for the poor people, and on this way, so it can help to promote balance the income gap. We know everything has two sides, so at the following, we are going to talk about the negative effects of the conspicuous consumption. The conspicuous consumption distort people's value and even lead to corruption of the individuals. When people emphasize on their wealth and status, they will do their best to show off and compare with others. People make their life purpose and meaning position in the constant needs to show off. For example, in many cases of corruption, some officials want to show off their status and power, make conspicuous consumption, even give up principles and break the laws to satisfy their desire. They trading power for money, embezzlement and bribery until they become corrupt and degenerate. The second negative effect for conspicuous consumption we are going to talk about is it will lead to waste of resources, and it goes against the strategy of creating a conservation-minded society and sustainable development. Investing a lot of capitals and consuming a lot of resources to produce conspicuous goods just for show off to others and gain the status, this kind of irrational consumption will waste a lot of resources and property which could be saved. The consumption of resources, especially scarce resources, will directly affect the creation of conservation-minded society and the implementation of sustainable development strategy. The third negative effect is about the conspicuous consumption leading to a decline in overall level of social welfare. Because the utility of social wealth is not well used, the conspicuous consumption not only make a huge cost of production luxury goods, but also the consumer turn luxury goods into waste after the purchase. And the people who have money do not cherish the goods, and those people who need it have no money to buy. The rich people buy the luxury goods just for their vanity. After satisfying their vanity, they will waste them, and which is kind of wasting the wealth. So it is the low growth in the real wealth and a decline in overall social welfare. Now we are going to talk about the last one of the negative effects. The conspicuous consumption lead to unreasonable social production orientation. The conspicuous consumption put a lot of resources and financial resources into production the goods which could be wasted. However, the society is lacking resources and financial resources to meet the people's real needs. Therefore, the conspicuous consumption is also contrary to our policy of enriching the people. Now I'm going to talk about the property called single crossing property. The single crossing property means the marginal cost of consuming the conspicuous goods is higher for individuals with lower wealth, so that the indifference curve of consumer with different level of wealth cross at most once. So mention the single crossing property because it shows that the Veblen effects do not erase when the model satisfy the single crossing property. When the single crossing property is satisfied, consume the conspicuous goods will squeeze out the consumption of inconspicuous goods. Also, there is a demonstrating marginal rate of substitution. So the cost of low-level wealth consumer compete buying the conspicuous goods with high-level wealth consumers is higher than the utility they can gain from it. After that, the high-level wealth people will have no motive to buy the conspicuous goods to distinguish themselves from the low-level wealth people. So, and under this situation, they can choose to buy a lot of low-price goods to show off their wealth. So the Veblen effects will not erase. Also, from the article, we can see there is a model to show like when the single crossing property fails, the Veblen effect can exist. In the article, they demonstrate the tangency property is satisfied in the presence of bankrupt constraints. That's because the marginal cost of conspicuous consumption is inversely related to wealth at low expenditure levels, but the positive relative to wealth at high expenditure levels. To conclusion, Beckwell and Burham assume the conspicuous goods have the same function as other goods, and they explain the Veblen effect is consumer willingness to pay a higher price for the functional equivalent goods. So people just want to pay the conspicuous goods because they can show off themselves. In the society, we can choose to observe the consumer's shopping action to determine their wealth level and status. At last, we find that when the single crossing property is satisfied, the Veblen effects cannot be erased. Because conspicuous goods reduce expenditures on other goods and they declining the marginal rate of substitution, so that the conspicuous consumption is more costly for the household with less wealth. At the end of the presentation, here there is two questions for you. So the first one is, what do you think is the main reason for the Veblen effect? Is the result of economic promotion or the psychological problem? And the second question is, in my presentation, I mentioned the pros and cons of the Veblen effect. Do you think the advantage outweigh the disadvantage or the disadvantage are more? And that's a reference for the presentation. At last, thank you for watching.